just want to say thanks for joining today. Looking forward to having a nice discussion here, reviewing some great work that Coach Gallivan has put in. Just wanted to say off the gate that if you have any questions, just pop them into the chat. We got a team of moderators here that will flag that, and then we will answer those questions at the appropriate time. What's the state of the industry here in the academy space and youth sports? We are no longer in the era of community rec leagues. Youth sports has transformed into an institutionalized $21 billion industry. We're seeing a prestige economy where families are willing to spend upwards of $85,000 a year at elite academies to secure one of a highly limited number of college roster spots. And because these financial stakes are so high, parents no longer accept trust the process style messaging. They demand definitive transparency, objective proof of their child's development. And athletes also look to position themselves as recruitable and coachable and prepare for the next step. And despite these massive investments, most academies are running on fractured infrastructure. So you have scattered Google Sheets, disconnected wearable apps, isolated testing data. This creates a massive data to action gap where instead of coaching, your staff is bogged down by administrative drag, and they're acting as data entry clerks. You lack a unified way to show parents the week-to-week progress and develop a narrative that they're demanding. So ultimately, this is about your organization's bottom line. And Coach Gallivan's here to talk through the latest research and long-term athletic development and different workflows to apply so that you stop selling hope and you start selling objective proof. Providing this data-driven transparency allows you to easily justify premium tuition, drastically reduce friction and questions from intensive parents, improve retention, and prepare athletes for their next step. So Coach G, I will stop sharing and hand over the stick to you.
My name is Mike Gallivan. I've been at CoachMePlus for about 6 years now. I've gotten the really great opportunity of working with a lot of our elite sports organizations. So our professional sports teams are Division I college teams. I've worked with the Army and the Navy. So a lot of what's going to be in this presentation is, yes, it's going to be focused on what's found in the literature and recommendations and coaching from the literature, but I do have quite a bit of anecdotal things in here as well, just talking through and visualizing things that I have had the opportunity to help other coaching staffs use to monitor their athletes, whether it's readiness and growth, and what people do at the highest level, and to basically from there demonstrate it down to how any of these tools can be used at any level using CoachMePlus. So, with this first part of the presentation, the research brief, I will throw through a couple slides of what professional organizations use, typical KPIs that we've seen in the platform, and longitudinal trends and how to track those over time using our dashboard builder and our different visualizations. How teams use different pieces of data, whether it's off-the-shelf commercial wearable devices or GPS units and anything like that to mitigate the risk of injuries. And then as well, talk about the practical translation of literature to actual taking it on the field, taking it into your practice facility and utilizing it. From there, the third section or the next section after that, I'm going to go actually into a live demo of the platform. I'm going to walk through some of these tools, a couple of dashboard visualizations to really give you guys an idea of how things can be separated by role. How, you can have a role that sees everything. You can have a sports science role that just focuses on the things that they care about and has access to the athlete's data that they need to see. And you can split it out by role. So you can split it out from your S&C staff to your nutrition staff. You can have communication between those two roles and different things like that. And then how to not only integrate all of that within your organization, but how to communicate that out to stakeholders. So in the youth sports organization, do you have an athlete profile they can push out to people that are recruiting? Do you have a progress tracker, a place to put information for parents that are wondering why they're paying you all the money that they're paying you? How is my kid doing and why? So being able to walk through those tools is the main goal of this here. So moving into this, things that we've seen in the comprehensive monitoring ecosystem. So our inputs, what CoachMePlus can ingest, there's really no limit to that. So what we've seen in biomechanical tracking and movement tracking, you talk force plates for involved and things like that, and velocity-based training units. You've got your gym wares and any GPS units like your Connects on your stat sport, things like that. So measuring athletes' ability to generate and absorb force, changing in direction, rate of force development, and then mechanical load, distance traveled, reps taken in practice, things like that. You can also look at more physiological tracking such as heart rate sensors, whether it be something like a first beat or again, just a heart rate strap from Garmin or Polar, Whoop and Aura can use off-the-shelf tracking devices in terms of just getting an idea of how people are sleeping, what's their HRV look like. And obviously, while none of these are perfectly accurate, gives you a great picture of where your athletes stand. And then last but not least, you have your subjective metrics that you can track using questionnaires and forms for your athletes. Just a simple question: how hard was the session today? How long did you work for? How do you feel this morning? Are you mentally alert? How do you think you hydrated yesterday? And pair that with a urine specific gravity. Or in another professional sports organization, we've had logs of what athletes are using what in the facilities to see what's getting attention, what's being used in terms of recovery modalities. So from that, we take all of these inputs and give you outputs. So we've got reporting systems, we've got dashboards, we've got ways to communicate this to multiple stakeholders. So if you think of one of the professional sports organizations that we worked with, we've got the staff that's in the heat of things, doing the work, collecting the data, working with the athletes, and then how do they deliver that information up to the head coach or the GM above that when it comes time to talk contracts or when it comes time to talk starters and who needs a rest. And then how do we talk about with the sports science team, what are we doing to mitigate injury risk? How do my players look? Hey, somebody got hurt. Let's look at past data, see if we could have done something differently in the future. And then, of course, that stakeholder communication that I talked about, where you're delivering the messages, whether it's within the organization to investors or other stakeholders like your general manager, or delivering it out to the athletes themselves, because without athlete buy-in, you got nothing. And then parents, obviously, or parents or guardians and things like that. So this is just going to be a typical list of components that we've seen within athlete profiles. Obviously, it depends on where you are in the season, who you're communicating this to, and who wants to see what. But you see your anthropometrics, you got your height, your weight, your age, your body comp, just simple things like that. If you're looking at the athlete state, CoachMePlus can track hydration status a number of ways, whether it's a pre and post weight difference and a calculation off of electrolyte and fluid loss, or just urine specific gravity measurement. We can talk sleep quality from any of the number of wearable devices that you can wear during sleep, and then list anything from the resting heart rate, their average heart rate from yesterday, max heart rate, HRV, and then fatigue and muscle soreness as reported by the athlete. How you feeling today? Where does it hurt? Show me. And then the use of recovery modalities as well. So I'm hurting, but I'm going to go take some time with the Normatec boots today. And then you can get into the little nitty gritty with training inputs. So looking at acute program variables like intensity and volume and tonnage, work to rest ratios, acute to chronic work ratios, and training stress balance. And then looking at internal and external loads. So distance traveled, how much did you sprint? How many accelerations or decelerations did you experience during a training session or game? Talking NFL, taking your Connexon training data from practice and comparing to Zebra data from games collected by the league. You can look at training impulse, heart rate, and blood lactate. Just any of the inputs that you can think of that can monitor load on the body can be ingested with the system and then put with other data points to really help nail things down. We've got more KPIs in here. Again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this one just because, like I said earlier, it really largely depends on where you're at, what sport. Are you in the off season? Are you in season? What are you looking at? But you've got your anaerobic and aerobic capacity tests, your VO2 max testing, your Wingate test, maybe your yo-yo, level 1 or level 2, repeated sprint ability, your strength and force production, whether you're using IMTPs or you're looking at like a gym aware unit where you're looking at a force velocity profile or just raw numbers or maybe relative numbers, kilograms per kilogram, per body weight. So looking at my strength per body weight, looking at counter movement jump, whether it's height or your ability to absorb the force landing the jump, your drop jump, your reactive strength index, and things like that. And then you've got your agility tests, your T-tests, your pro agilities, your 505s, you name it. And then speed tests, your flying 10, 20s, and 30s. And then just to demonstrate a little bit of the flexibility, we've got some sport-specific variables. We selected 4 sports, looking at basketball, football, soccer, and skiing. These, obviously, there's going to be a little bit of crossover. There's going to be a little bit of difference between sports. And again, it depends on where you are in the season. But things that we've seen with basketball, you look at the yo-yo level 1 performance a lot, or the 30-15 intermittent test, something simple as a half-court sprint, or a drop jump or CMJ, things like that, and tracking body weight over time. A lot of the sports that we've used, their dietitian staff, their nutrition staff tracks body weight to look at chronic fluid loss, chronic weight loss over time, and things like that. So it's not just how are you moving, how are you absorbing impact, but how are you taking care of yourself and recovering. Looking at, obviously, for football, strength numbers, rate of force development, reactive strength index, things like that. And then again, same thing for soccer. And then what I found really cool, we have a coach that works at our team that had worked at skiing academies, and some of the tests they do are really awesome. A progressive submax bike test where you're collecting blood lactate and looking at a person's ability in anaerobic capacity, looking at displacement and power on a drop jump or their static jump. And again, across the board, CoachMePlus can ingest this data and put it next to external load, internal load, and just kind of get a full picture of what the athlete's looking like. Before I get into the more fun stuff, we do have roles within the system. So looking at how you want the dashboards to look and how you're communicating certain things to certain people within your organization. So things that I've seen and communicated to leadership, there's a football team we work with that creates athlete profiles for the athlete and then athlete profiles for the GM. Hey, this guy was great at showing up on time, taking feedback, recovering, listening to what we tell them, resting when we ask them to, things like that. And then just at a big top down during the season, who's ready to go today? Who needs rest today? Who is in the training room? Whatever that may be. And then you can get into a little bit more with the performance staff of, okay, what's their training stress balance? Are they fatigued? Are they trending towards fatigue? Are they in a place where they might be overtraining a little bit? Things like that. And then your athletes, your clarity and giving the athletes ownership over their own data. So we had an NFL team that would just post a daily slide on everybody's phone that they were walking through the facility. Hey, your meeting's at this time. Lift is at this time. We're going to eat together at this time during training camp, stuff like that. And then developmental priorities. Hey, your weaknesses that we're going to be focusing on over the next X number of weeks are X, Y, and Z. And then your status right now is you're looking great. You're looking strong. You're producing force based on your last, force plate or based on, game load that we calculated from time on ice. And then your stakeholders. Last but not least, certainly not least, your parents and your guardians, the people that you have to keep happy for sure in a youth academy, looking at, are they getting better over time, explaining any peaks and valleys within the data, and then giving them a general idea of, hey, what can your kid be doing better? What can your athlete be doing better, whether it's physically or mentally, to approach themselves. So there's a number of data that I could, or descriptions or displays that I can go through within the platform. However, out of respect for privacy of certain athletes and certain teams, I grabbed screenshots instead. So to give you a general idea of how certain things can look in the system, I've got a back squat force velocity profile of a current NFL running back. Obviously, this was 2 seasons ago, but again, just kind of trying to respect privacy a little bit. You can see in my screenshot on hover, I hovered over one of the data points so you can see what's being collected on the graph exactly. So you've got the weight on the bar and their concentric mean velocity. So, what weight are they moving? You can see on the bars as weight goes down, typically on their profile, their ability to move the bar goes up. Obviously what you would expect to see. So pretty cool to see in the data there. But if you're not seeing that, you can start looking at why, what's going on, are they fatigued and whatnot. And then looking at these strength numbers over time, which I thought was a great visual of, the progress certainly isn't perfect. You've got times where they might be hurt, times where they might be overworked or fatigued. It's, off season and they're going through a little bit of rehab, but you can see on both of these metrics, the S&C staff can see fully from start to finish, it's a net positive for both of these pieces of data. And you would likely have keys here and tables underneath on the dashboard explaining on this day they were, they had an ankle or they had a knee or whatever it might have been, talking through that profile for the athlete. But it's visualized right in front of you. And it's with obviously any other data that they might deem important to be putting with it, below it, or underneath it. In terms of injury mitigation and readiness, I know this is a lot of numbers and tables, but this is one of the most fun projects that I've ever had the chance to work on. This was one of our high profile teams that we worked with in the NFL, things that they were tracking, and they were looking at training stress balance. They did a 7 to 28 day ratio of acute to chronic for various things across both First Beat and Connexon. So they were looking at just distance and distance per minute. And these the top table is from practice for the week. looking at high speed running at 80 to 90 and 90 to 100% of their top speed, and then accelerations and decelerations, and looking at TSB, and then flagging it in red when they're above a certain threshold. I believe their threshold there was 1.5 that they had set of, okay, it's time for, we'll dial it back if we can on certain players, obviously noting that, if you don't have 28 days of past data, somebody's off an injury, their TSB is going to be a little high. So looking at below, we have our load prediction and daily decision support. This was actually built off of the top table where they would take this out to the practice field. It got cut off and I didn't realize that until just now, but the headers on this table were what distance, how many yards at high metabolic demand, how many yards at high speed running, how many accelerations are going to get them to a certain TSB today. And they would take this table out to practice while monitoring their Kinexon and say, okay, player A has hit their threshold that might put them at a risk on their high speed running. Let's shut it down. They no more sprints. Things like that they would use to monitor decisions. Yes, Matt.
Hey, Galvin, right while you were on this, we had a question in the chat. Just wanted to pose it if you have a second. So how does the platform integrate data from wearable or measurement devices? And then how easy is it to export an athlete multi-year performance to a scout or a recruiter? You may get into that in the demo.
Easy.
Yep.
Yeah. It's easier to say out loud. Most of these that I'm picking right now, these data points were through an API. So they automatically came from the Kinexon dashboard or on the game day side of things, because this team also would import game day data from Zebra. The league would give them a CSV file. I built them a template. So on either Sunday nights or Monday mornings, they would drop that Zebra data into the platform to compare to the Kinexon numbers. So it's very, very easy to get it in. We have an API built, an automatic data pull with a number of devices. So we have Vault Force plates, we have Kinexon, the number of other things that I'm drawing a blank on that you can draw directly from. In terms of the NHL, we pull directly from NHL.com for players' time on ice and different metrics that teams have used, shots faced, games played in a row for goalies to determine rest for hockey. So it comes fairly easy. Yes, there's an initial setup time period that takes a little bit of software development on our end, but when it is turned on, it runs, we monitor it. When the company changes stuff, we change with them, and then we're able to pull and display that data quickly. And then in terms of pulling this type of information out of the system, this particular report wasn't in a dashboard for them because they would take it out to the field. They exported a CSV and a PDF of their tables every single day prior to practice, and like the 10-15 minutes before, they'd go in, click into their report and kick it out. If it were a longer term export of data, you can absolutely do that. You just set the date range. I can run through our reporting tool fairly quickly within the system to show you how that's built and how that's ran. Right within our reporting tool in the system, we just have a button to export to either an Excel spreadsheet, a PDF, or an Excel CSV. So it's pretty easy to put it in, easy to work with it while it's in the system. If you need it out of the system for something else, you can absolutely do that, export it pretty quickly. Otherwise, like I was alluding to with our dashboards, you can just straight up take those dashboards out of the system as a PDF and say, as a snapshot in time, here's where this athlete was looking and how things go. And once I get to the dashboards in the actual platform, I'll show you how that stuff works as well. You can walk through that too. But good questions. And then lastly, talking about just the practical translation of this and where these things come from. I wanted to talk just very briefly about the research, talking about, I talked about looking at chronic hydration and dehydration, or weight loss over time. I'm sure everybody in this call is well aware, but even a 1% to 2% dip in body mass over time can impair performance. And when you're talking youth sports academies, unless you're on them about it, it's typically hard for youth, or not hard, they just don't pay attention to it because they don't know the importance of replacing fluid loss, especially in the heat and things like that. So looking at hydration monitoring, we can do it multiple ways, whether it's a daily weigh-in, a weigh-in, weigh-out, or your USGs, and then our acute to chronic workload ratios. From the research, there's a sweet spot of 0.8 to 1.3. Like I said, the team that I was referencing before capped it at 1.5. That's been cited in the research as like a point that really increases significantly the risk of developing either a non-contact injury or otherwise, depending on what's going on. And the moderate ranges in that sweet spot of 0.8 to 1.3 are typically associated with lower injury risk in the literature versus undertraining and going right at it or overload. And then talking training impulse is just a way to quantify internal load using heart rate duration, heart rate reserve and duration, just giving you an idea over time of how the stress internally on the body for an athlete. So looking at that, you can do a TSB of trim over time. So you're kind of looking at that. And then simply put, the athlete input, session RPE, base load correlates with training time, acute to chronic workload ratios, and injury occurrence in youth athletes. So while it's not a perfect estimate, an athlete's estimate of how hard they worked over time, over the course of the season, especially after education on what rating of perceived exertion is and where I'm looking, what's easy, what's hard, has shown to be very valuable in how to manage an athlete's load. So the key takeaways of all this is just building chronic exposure, going slowly, progressive overload. It's nothing, nobody's reinventing the wheel, right? But it's just having everything in one spot to make sure that you're tracking everything and making sure you're not overloading or on the other side of things, not exposing enough, not pushing enough when it comes down to here. I saw Chris's question come through briefly. What's up?
Yeah, I'm just gonna read it out loud. It's another one. So you're digging into some really awesome different configuration setups. The question is, what does the daily time commitment look like for coaches and trainers to manage all this? And do you help with setup?
Yeah, Chris, I would like to save that question for when I get into the actual platform demo. It's very short, and yes, we do help with setup to put it simply, but I think to be easier to explain, I would like to be in the platform to show where the tools are. So when I get to that point, I'll absolutely cover that.
You got it. Thank you.
So here's a preview of where I'm going to go. I'm going to jump into the platform demo next. So I'm going to stop sharing really quickly so I can switch my tab. All right, so looking at, this is the home screen. This is the coach home screen or the administrator home screen of the CoachMePlus platform. So there's a number of tools that I'll cover very briefly on this. And going back to the time commitment question, it depends on what you want to do. Obviously, it depends on how much time you want to give or how much time you want to take during the day. But what we've done and what we've seen over time is making it as quick, as simple as possible, especially for leadership, for coaches, for GMs, at a quick glance, or even in the tactical setting, looking at a unit commander, just tell me who's good to go so I can move on with the people that are good to go, right? So we can jump into a group dashboard, but I would like to push or just touch really quickly on the tools on the home screen in case, you're checking on something else, your group status as a whole, depending on what you're looking at. We do out of the box have 3 widgets on the coach's home screen for you, looking at their training status. And what this is for your group is looking at who has an assignment in terms of an actual fitness program assignment, who's done it, who hasn't. So looking at the key here to expand, today there's no assignment. Yesterday there was one for this specific group. I have one athlete that was great and did their workout. I've got a bunch that did not. So in a case like this, if it was just one, I would likely go in and message that athlete and say, hey, you had a training session yesterday that you missed. Let's talk about it when I see you. Or do you want me to move it to today? We'll talk about, reorganizing your training structure moving forward. Or, hey, just don't worry about it. We're going to skip it. We'll make up for it at another time. Whatever it is that you want to go, you can directly from that widget jump right into a message with that athlete, shoot it to them, and they'll get a message on their phone. Boom, nice and easy. So you can shoot that message over to them. They'll get a push notification like they got an Instagram message, and you can move on and wait and see what's going on. But in terms of the group, you can also jump into the messaging and you can go to your entire team and say, hey guys, you all missed it. So moving down to the group's wellness, this is out of the box wellness questionnaire. I'm going to show that in a second, but you can see quick trends, quick at a glance, who's good, who's filling it out, who's not, and how is that trending looking over time. So this would be a spark line with plus or minus, however their overall wellness score is averaging and changing. And then in terms of groups nutrition, we do have a nutrition widget within the system. This is something for if you have a nutritionist or a dietitian on staff, it'd be great for them to track. I will not spend a ton of time on it, but to give you a general idea, it is very similar to any other nutrition module that you've seen. You can set macronutrient and calorie target goals. And if I were to go as an athlete and log a food, just to pick something that's fairly nutrient dense quickly, it does also populate a micronutrients dropdown to see what they've taken in on that so far. If that's something that they want to monitor anything, whether it's iron intake, certain vitamin intake, looking at sodium intake, whatever it may be, depending on your population. And again, to touch briefly, just so I don't jump too crazy into the nutrition module itself, which is an entire webinar on its own, you can set targets for a user, either just saying, here's a direct calorie target. I'm going to manually put in 2,300 calories. I'm going to make your macro split and we're going to ride. You can also use any of our estimation equations on BMR using an activity level modifier that will tell you what moderately active equates to in our system and what the multiplier is. So say we've got an athlete who's 5'10", 165, and they're 18. You can see their calculated calorie target of 2756 if they're moderately active. And you can play with it from there, whether you want them in a surplus or a deficit, whatever you need to do. Again, this is a very brief jump into the nutrition module. Just wanted to give you a general idea of what that can look like. And I did mention very briefly the questionnaire ability to collect data. So our questionnaire builder is like any other form builder. If you jump into it, again, I'm going to keep this fairly brief. You can select what your questions are and how you want them to be asked. It can be anything from a sliding scale to a number input to a free text input. It can also, and I'll show you a preview what I mean by this, it can be a body chart in which they can flip and say, my hamstrings are very sore today, and let you know, and that can display in the dashboard. So the possibilities of tracking, you can actually track urine color. If you don't have a USG spectrometer, you can just say, what was the color of your pee when you woke up this morning? And they can report that on a scale of 1 to 10, and the buttons are colored what they would expect to see. So you can see that as well. So that's a very widely used tool that typically in these kinds of environments have just been used for anything like pain and soreness reporting, anything like RPE, acute to chronic workload ratios, and things like that. So all of that to say, you don't have to pay attention to that every day. It depends on your role in the system. It depends on what you want to see. If you wanted to see any of those tools, there they are for you. The last thing I'll show really quickly is our notifications panel, and then I'm going to jump into the actual data displays. The notification panels themselves, you can go ahead and you can send notifications out to as many athletes as you want in a couple clicks. These eyeballs, the yellow means that only a couple of the people I've sent it to have read it. The green one means everybody I sent it to has read it. If it were red, that means nobody's opened it, but the quick form is nice and easy. I can go ahead and say, I want everybody in my level 1 group to get this notification. And we're going to say practice cancel. And that's it. I send that out. Team gets the alert and away they go. And I can see who gets it and who doesn't in case I need to follow up later. So just some communication tools. Again, I wanted to touch on fairly briefly because I just wanted to save a little bit of time for the meat and potatoes of the presentation. It's going to be our program builder, our dashboards, our reporting module, and things like that. So on the other half of Chris's question here, pulling data out of the system. This is going to be our reports module. In this, when I first click in, would be any saved reports. So reports that I run all the time, I can save in this panel and come back to as many times as I'd like. And to build a report, I hit the quick report button, and it's very simple walking through who do I want to see it for, from when, and what is it. So say I want to see my training group level 1 over the last month. So from April 1st to today, and I want to see our academy testing fields. Very simple academy testing, but you get the gist. I selected all those fields. They're good to go. I can select how I want to group it. So if I want athlete date and when it was recorded, or just athlete and date. If I think, or if I know that I ran multiple trials of certain tests. So say I've done the 3 jumps. They have done 5 sprints, whatever that is, and I want to see the best. So I want to see the minimum value of my sprints on the multiple values calculation. I can do that. Otherwise, I can leave it at newest, hit submit, and I get my report spun up in a table very simply. I get my raw data, and then like I mentioned before, this button here, I click on the download. I can say I want it as a CSV or Excel, and away I go. The chart fields themselves, I'll quickly grab that and show you what that can look like. Hit refresh. Now, since I've charted, I can see, okay, there's only one value within the time frame that I selected, but I can see it's a line graph. I can change that if I want to and make it a bar graph. And I can expand out a couple months, see if I get more data. I do. There we are. So we can see how everybody's looking. If I click on the axes, I can turn them off. Obviously, the bar graph's not the greatest way to visualize that, so I'll refix that. And I can play around with it until I get something I'm happy with. And now I can click on the names to turn athletes off. So maybe I just want to see Fred Tucker's values over time and how he's been doing. So, and anything like that, this report itself, if I'm going to run it all the time, save it as a custom report. I can then save it. So I don't have to repopulate the field. I would only have to come in and change the date range that I'm looking at. And then the next time I come back into the reporting module, my saved report is right there and it's ready to run. So keeping that fairly easy. Now, in terms of setup and things like that of any devices that are going to feed the data, whether it's going to be, say, you've got polar heart rate straps, you've got Whoop bands, you've got a Connexon, and you've got a GymAware. Each of those is a development task that we take when onboarding you as a customer, as a partner. Basically, you tell us what you need, we talk about it, we get it set up, we get it built, and then from there, once the API itself is built, you would have a walkthrough with myself or my colleague Mike. We keep the naming easy here. And we would walk you through how you access those fields, how you work on them, how do I report on them, and everything like that. In terms of letting you fly on your own, that is something that we're fond of, but we can always build your first round of dashboards. I know personally when I do that for a customer, when I build out your dashboard layout, I record the entire process from start to finish and send it to you so you know click by click what to expect when building your own visualizations. And if you don't like how it looks, how do I get into there and change it? So that's something to just wanted to talk about in terms of setup before I got into the actual dashboards and what they look like. So I am going to start with a group dashboard and then dial down to the individual. And as I get into this, I do want to say, keep an open mind on this. All of these are configurable to where you are, who you want to see it, role specific, data specific, lots of colors here. I just wanted to light it up. It doesn't have to be this colorful and this busy. However, I just wanted to tell you what options we have. So this is what's called an assessment table within our system, and it can be just like I have it set here as a very simple data point. And to just kind of cover the whole range of things, looking at where I pulled this data from. Yesterday's strain score, that's pulled from a Whoop. Looking at urine specific gravity, that's readings from a spectrometer. Athlete rated hydration, athlete sleep rating, and reported readiness came from a questionnaire. Sleep duration came from an Oura ring in hours. So all of these things integrated into one table so you can get a holistic picture of how things look. And I will say that I sorted this newest values first, just to give you an idea as a coach who's ready to go on this layout. I probably want to see this top front and center to see on April 28th who's ready to train, who needs to talk to the dietitian. Hey, they didn't sleep, they didn't hydrate. Let's go figure it out, right? They reported a 0 for readiness, so we got to go fix that. So up top, and then moving down beyond the display of our assessment table, we have various builders. So I picked a few of them to give you a general idea. So we can do TSB and acute to chronic workloads. In this particular graph, I use the 7 to 28. You can use 7 to 21. You can use any chronic range, any acute range that you prefer. Again, keeping an open mind, these are all heavily configurable. And this came from athlete reported RPE and a coach reported duration on training. So everybody in the team that went to training that day has the same duration to make sure things are consistent. And then the only thing that changes that training stress balance on here is the athlete reported RPE. And this graph will show you their chronic, their acute, and their daily load, and it'll show you their balance, their TSB, training stress balance. So you can see it spikes here and then dips back down. So it's like they dialed down the intensity, they read the graph, they made training decisions based off of this. To give you a peek under the hood, we'll get this edit pencil. And this is basically, in a nutshell, how you set these up. So it's very simple. What do I want to name it? Where am I pulling RPE from? Where am I pulling duration from? And these are fields within the system. How many days of data you want to see? And then this is where I pick my acute load and my chronic load. So it's really simple. Do I want to include current day or not? And then I set my thresholds on what I'm looking at. Where do I want my danger to be? And if I want it to be red and really jump out, I can change that, save it. I jump back to the layout after that, and it will reflect for me in a different color. And there you go. So just different things to keep in mind. These are very configurable. And then looking down from the coach view here, I know these are going to be all over the place. The reason I did that was to show you what our graphs can look like. So this is going to be a group aggregate of counter movement jump. Man, I'm a great strength conditioning coach, and everybody just gets better every time they go for a jump. Looking at a line graph, you can do bar graphs, column or bar, and then we can do splines, curvy lines. You can do an area filled in underneath. And this is bright red. I know I did that on purpose to illustrate that you have full control over these aggregate graphs, over what color the actual component, the data components are to. A little bit of customization in there for you. And you can fly it from there. So there's your group overview. Again, keeping an open mind, this can be anything that you need it to be, anything that you typically track over time, and anything that you care about, say as the coach. This is going to be front and center what you need. And these tables don't have to be past 7. It can be just today. What do things look like? Show me today. So I don't have to look at as much. It can be a little overwhelming. Again, fully configurable. But on that note, I'm going to dial into a little bit of individual and role specific dashboards now. So from this layout, if I want to check on somebody, I can click right on their avatar in my group dashboard table, and I can say, all right, I want to jump right to their dashboard. It'll bring me to their athlete profile, kick me over to their dashboard layouts, and then you can see, okay, I've got my coach view, and this is just this athlete now, just this individual athlete. How do things look? What am I looking at? Now, just to show you, I can hit the edit pencil. Our assessment tables bounce back out, so just give me a second. What I'm going to do is change the sort order of the days. So instead of showing newest first, when I refresh the layout, I can see it flow in a left to right format of oldest to newest now. Again, depends on how you want to see things. So we've got our same readiness values, again, coming from a combination of devices and athlete reporting and practitioner reporting through testing. We have our HRV and our readiness coming from a Whoop device. So just to give you a general idea of the wearable device and how the athlete's looking objectively coming from a device. We have our same acute to chronic, and then we have a little bit different graphs here for the individual. So what I did for the individual was I displayed them on a percentile ranking for each of the 5 selected KPIs that are on this layout. Where do they rank among the group? And on Hover, I can see that. So I can see for their distance on the yo-yo level 1, they're in the 90th percentile when compared to their group. And then on the graphs themselves, the dotted line that you see underneath is going to be the group average. So you can see where they stack up over time versus the rest of their team that they're training with. So you can see what is the net positive, and they're also above the group. But you can also see in their half court sprint, they're here, they have improved, but they are not as fast, as short of a time as the team average. So just looking at different things there on the individual coach layout. I'm going to jump into the performance staff first. So this layout's going to have a couple different components to it. With this one, I added in athlete reported pain and soreness on here. So you're going to have the same readiness table as the coach. You don't have to if you don't want to. And then on the right side, I put in the body chart. And what you can see is if it were in bold, that soreness, or if it were red, the pain would be today. And anything that is that more dimmer, opaque color has been reported within the last 30 days, either pain and soreness. So this guy has been reporting a little bit of hip, quads, calves, a lot of lower body soreness over the past 30 days. This dashboard, mind you, can be obviously modified. It can be the last 7 days. It can be today and yesterday. You can entirely control the time frame of any of these. What I include is our tagged recent notes. So you've got a SOAP note from one of your practitioners. Say they went to the AT, and you can see, okay, they had general soreness and tightness in their calves prior to today's session. So what did I do? I did a quick assessment. We just decided we're going to do some light range of motion movement. Plan is we're going to do some heat, motion, range of motion, come back after practice, tell me how you feel. And then I put in just an example of a couple of things that you might want to see in a movement screen. So just looking at hip external and internal rotation, shoulder external and internal. These are practitioner input, and I'll show you what that form looks like as well in terms of inputting numbers directly rather than relying on a device. It can be a mix of anything you'd like to see. And then the same KPIs, just so they can see. And then we got volume and tonnage here weekly to just kind of keep track on that. Again, I did throw just a bunch of stuff into this layout just to give you a general idea of options. It doesn't have to be this busy. It can be very simplified. Performance staff can be split up from S&C to AT to nutrition. It doesn't have to all be in the same place. Just again, for the sake of time, just wanted to make sure I covered as much as I could. And then here's your parent portal. A little bit of a different profile look. We've got some athlete pictures from them live in action playing some basketball. This isn't a real person, by the way. So we've got our coachability ranking. So this is something that we kicked around as a team. Chris came up with it. I thought it was kind of fun. And what I did was, as you can see here, if I hit the I on this, it gives you an explanation of what each of these categories of the coachability score is. Again, we kind of made it up, but we based it on research. We based it on literature. So this is absolutely not something you need to use. It's just a general idea of what can be put on a parent portal of, okay, hey, my kid scored lower on proactive engagement. What's that mean? Oh, it's from the self-determination theory. They're acting out of personal choice and genuine interest rather than external pressure. It's a little low. So maybe they're feeling a little pressure. We got to talk about it, hey, how can I help you? Whatever it may be, right? And then you've got your athletes ranking versus their group. You've got their coachability ranking, their KPIs. You can see their progress over time. Is my kid getting better? Are they not? And then you've got a note from the coach. And this is actually based off of something that I've seen in an athlete profile, again, with an NFL team of at the end of the season, they had tables of everything that they did from training camp to in season to just at the end of the season with their performance and their team's average, their position average, rather, not just their team average. But if you're a running back, you're getting compared to everybody else on the running back depth chart. And then at the bottom, they would give them notes, parting notes. Hey, we're going to give you X, Y, and Z to work on in the off season. And then, so just basically a little bit more communication. This is the same dashboard as the SOAP notes dashboard. It's just tag coach update instead. So that's what shows here. Just to give you some flexibility from the SOAP notes section of the system, which I'll show you. It does support Markdown. We have Markdown FAQs to walk you through that if you want headers, different heading sizes, bold, italic text, whatever you need. Just to communicate things a little bit differently with your parents and your athletes. And then last but not least, really quickly, I am going to impersonate the athlete themselves. I'm going to jump over to this tab. This is the athlete profile. Mind you, this block up here and this background can be fully edited to be branded to your organization. So if you are Notre Dame football, you can be branded to Notre Dame football. You don't have to have CoachMePlus all over the place, right? So that can all be edited so the athlete can see who they are working with, what part of the team they are, and they'll see all their to-dos. So I got to fill out my AM wellness questionnaire. And again, it's just sliders. How restful was your sleep? How well did you hydrate? I think I did pretty good yesterday, and I'm feeling super focused. However, my calves are still on fire. We're doing a lot of sprints because we lost. All right, so we submit that, and that gets delivered to my coaching staff so they can see on the 29th, okay, I'm still dealing with some tightness and soreness down there in my calves. I can see my communication here. I've got a message. Remember to complete my post-POI event survey. I was in the Army, apparently. And then if I click over to my data tab as an athlete, I've got my own athlete profile that's going to be slightly different from the parent portal that I had created, both available on your athlete's mobile device. So they don't have to be logged in on a desktop. If I were to come in here and look at it this way, it's mobile friendly. All of this would fit on an iPad, on a cell phone, anything like that. So they can scroll through and see where they rank, but they get the same tools, the same experience that they would if they were on a desktop. So it is mobile. It does fly mobile. You don't have to worry about always logging onto a computer with the application. You'd have no athlete buy-in if that were the case. So they have the ability to jump into that. This is, again, a very brief overview of the possibilities within the system. I would like to open it up for questions, but in keeping the theme, most of the question that you asked me, the answer is probably going to be yes. Can we track this? Probably. So looking forward to that. But if anybody has any questions, anything at all, fire away. That's really just what I wanted to talk about, was the ability to consolidate information very easily, and the fact that we've done this at a high level for a very long time. And it's just every time we work with a new team, a new organization, a new sport, a new activity, everything that we do adapts over time with it based on what we get to learn from the coaching staff. So none of this stuff is ever crammed down your throat or pushed at you in any way. Me personally became a very large fan of every team I got to work with, because I create a relationship with everybody I get to hang out with, and you become part of the CoachMePlus family. So just in keeping that, yeah, that's it for me. So if anybody has any questions, the floor is yours.
Give everybody a chance to put something into the chat if they wanted to. Galvin, you obviously covered this, and Coach Z did in the chat too, but we had another question about, like, if these athletes are teenagers, what have you seen as a way to build culture and habits around logging into a new app? Do you have any other insights for that?
Yeah, let's see, what did Mike say? Organization. Yeah, organizations that make it a priority is big. The big thing that we've seen, and this is, if you think about, and not to bring this out of the sports realm, but into the military, but athletes, soldiers are very competitive inherently, right? So the thing that we've seen that's worked the best is leadership buy-in. So is the leader not just pushing information in the app, but are they using it themselves? Are they using it themselves for their own workouts? And competition. So we have leaderboards within the applications that you can do a monthly challenge, a weekly challenge, whether it's a step count challenge or it's a squat 1 rep max challenge. And you can put that up on a monitor on a standalone thing in the facility that shows, John Smith squatted 550 yesterday, go get it. That's usually the biggest thing. We've done different things like pushing educational content. We have what's called an athlete feed within the system. And what that is basically the ability to push images, PDFs, and videos out to the phones of the users to try to grab them with information. But genuinely, the biggest thing that gets buy-in and engagement, outside of just saying, hey, your workout's ready to go, is I'm comparing you against everybody else and you're in 5th place. It's the competition aspect of it. The one thing that we did see with our beloved Buffalo Bills was there was camaraderie happening in the app. They were messaging each other, hey, I did my thing, did you do your thing? So it's the fact that they can engage with each other through the application, and compete with each other. We had a unit commander in the Army who would post a daily video after his workout saying, I did PT this morning, and then I went and lifted in the gym after. What are you doing? And that was a huge spike in engagement after he started doing that, because it wasn't CoachMePlus pushing stuff. It was a guy that they know, they respect, they look up to, was using the application. So that's what does it.
Yeah, you can't stop an athlete from competing, right? That's just the way it goes. Well, that's awesome. Obviously, we have a little bit more time if anybody flags any other questions, but I just wanted to thank everybody for joining this conversation. Following this call, we're going to send out a wrap-up email that includes a link to the session. And if anybody wants to book a one-on-one demo or talk a little bit more about what we covered today, we're going to make that available to you as well. We're going to do some breakout clips too. So if you watch this and you wanted to revisit one of the dashboards that Coach G showed, or a different role or permission, we're going to do some breakout clips so you don't have to parse all the way back through the whole recording. So that will be ready for you too. But I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank everybody who watches back on the recording, and look forward to doing this again.